PaperX have already qualified for champions via points, and that means that there are 15 slots remaining across the 4 regions in the hunt for the champions trophy. Not only that, but all of these teams are clawing for a chance to make it into the 2027 new era of partnership, and adding a big champions trophy to your trophy case or simply getting a berth at champions is a great resume piece when you're trying to make your case to Riot. And all of that means that this is probably going to be the craziest and most interesting stage 2 we have ever had in Valorant esports history. And we're going to talk about all of that. We've got some results from China as well as predictions and previews for the first week of the other 3 regions. But before I do that, I just have to give a quick shout out to the sponsor of this episode, which is Sony INZONE. Now, I've been using Sony INZONE for a few months now, ever since they sent me a bunch of their products. These headphones, this mouse, the mouse pad, and even their monitor, which I can pull up on screen here, is an absolute beast. I've really been enjoying the quality of their products. Their INZONE peripherals line is basically a gaming focused, esports focused line of peripherals and tech that has been developed sort of in partnership with Fnatic to try and ensure that it is meeting your needs as a professional gamer, or at least a competitive one. Now, they sent me, a variety of different peripherals, and every single thing that I've tried has been very high quality, very easy to plug and play, and I've been super impressed with how much I like all of them, because I'm sort of particular about what I use, but at the end of the day, I just want something that works and looks good, and Sony has been fitting the bill for all of that. So I'm very excited to be partnered with them. Thank you, Sony, and make sure that you check out the link in the description below and in the pinned comment for their entire INZONE line. Okay, here's where we're going to start with the point standings, because I think this context of, the championship points and what it means to these teams and who can even qualify based off of the points and the placements is going to be really important to keep in mind as we talk about these teams. Now, additionally, one thing before we actually get into the matches and the predictions is I just want to give a little bit of perspective as a coach, because there's a few other moving pieces that I think are really important to consider. So when I made my initial power ranking last episode, there were some rosters that I didn't know of. I didn't know the complete history of their roster moves, or who even was going to play in stage 2. And this is something that everybody has to deal with coming into stage 2. We have some teams that have been established that are maybe potentially burning themselves out by playing a bunch of events. We had the EWC event that a lot of teams played in, a lot of the top teams played in, and potentially sort of almost screwed themselves over by not having enough time to now switch things before stage 2. And other teams might have used that as sort of a springboard into stage 2 by developing some new chemistry. In addition to that, we have so many teams with new rosters as well that it's really difficult to actually predict who is going to be good. And so I'm going to do my best. I did relatively well in China. You can see on Pick'ems, I got 5 out of the 8 correct, which is, it's better than 50% at least. And I'm going to try to do my best to predict these games as accurately as possible, but I'm going to get some wrong, and I'm happy for you guys to flame me about that in the comments below. One other thing I do want to talk about is just EWC in general. I don't want to spend too much time on this event because it's just for a number of reasons I have problems with EWC. I really hate the slot that it's in the calendar, and I think it makes it really hard to actually judge like how good these teams are. For example, 100 Thieves obviously playing very well. They look like they're in perfect form, probably the best form they've ever been in. They won this event, but what does that mean going forward? Because they play in just a couple of days, and that means that they are gonna just have to bring everything that they showed at EWC to stage 2. Likewise for NRG, Nongshim, BBL, probably all of these teams will not be able to change anything. And that's very important to consider, because last year when I was coaching in Pacific, we started off stage 2 playing against RRQ. Let me actually pull this up. So I played against RRQ last year in stage 2, who was coming off of EWC. And they I think had maybe flown back like 3 or 4 days before they played us, something like that. The timeline was really, really compressed. And so we knew that they couldn't change anything. There was a new map coming into the pool in Corrode, which has a very similar parallel this season, with Summit being the new map that these EWC teams have not been able to play or practice because they've been playing on the previous patch. And so not only are they extra readable because you can just look at, their past history of games, they can't change anything, they don't have a new map, and that makes it very easy to veto against them and very easy to anti these teams. So, for example, we played them on Haven, we antied the heck out of them, we knew exactly what they were going to do, and they also just kind of felt dead on stage because they had no energy. They'd just been grinding and traveling, and we were able to pull out, a new map that they had no prep on. And so we kind of destroyed them 2-0, and then they were able to bounce back and, placed relatively well overall. But we were able to kind of like snipe them on that first week back. So I think that's something that you have to be really careful of with some of these teams like 100 Thieves and Energy that have just finished EWC and are traveling back. They might start off very slow for stage 2. And so you kind of need to temper your expectations a little bit because it's just going to be so much easier for the teams that play them first to deal with them than maybe they might end up down the line. Okay, so we're just gonna go region by region. I'll get to China and their results last, but I just want to start with Americas because we're already kind of talking about some of these teams, and I just want to go into some of these opening matches. So Leviathan versus Furia is a super interesting one because we have two teams with very different stories. Lev obviously won Masters London. They look insane. They did not play EWC, right? I don't think they played at EWC, or at least they didn't play the finals. I don't even, this is how much I paid attention to this tournament. Yeah, so they didn't even play EWC. So they have been able to reset. And so they don't necessarily have that event hangover that you would expect from a team that has, been doing very well in the season. And I think that maybe bodes pretty poorly for Furia, who is coming in with a new roster, some significant role shakeup as well. It sounds like Koalanoob will probably be playing major main duelist, Shy taking over Sentinel, and Basic playing maybe secondary duelist or flex or smokes or something. And they're playing against a well-oiled machine in Leviathan, who has been able to really kind of reaffirm their identity, win a title, and then reset and kind of get ready for the next stage with a decent amount of time. So I think this one is going to be a pretty straightforward Lev win. They are my number one team in the power ranking for a reason. They look insanely good. I would expect these kids to still be hungry because not only are they young, so they just want to play and win Valorant as much as possible, but also they have had, a little bit of a break, which I think is kind of important as the season progresses. Okay, the next one is very interesting, and we had some unfortunate news today, which is that John Cutie had a emergency appendectomy, so his appendix burst, or I don't want to speculate exactly what happened, but he had his appendix removed. So he's recovering in the hospital, and their game is on Thursday, I believe. So I don't think that they will play him. I would assume they'll have an emergency sub. I don't know who that would be. But I would have a hard time picking Sentinels without John. Just being honest. He's probably their best player. Certainly close to the top in terms of his impact on the roster. Just firepower and mechanics wise, but then adding in the fact that he's the IGL and the leader of this team, it's a pretty rough start to the season for Sentinels. They are fortunate in that they're playing Cloud9, who is maybe the easiest team in their group. Certainly one of the easier matchups for them, but it's going to be tough having to replace your IGL and turn things around, get somebody into the system real quick. It's just a freak incident that could really, honestly, it could really hinder the Sentinels' hopes for doing anything this stage. That's one of the craziest things about the VCT, is that one little event at the wrong time can screw over your season. Because like if this was Sentinels against G2 or, you know, Energy or Lev or something like that, it would be a little bit more, okay, well, whatever, maybe they were going to lose anyway. But I would probably pick Sentinels over Cloud9 if it was their full roster. But without John, I think I might have to go Cloud9. And that could be like the one win that allows Sentinels to, you know, maybe make playoffs or something like that. Although that is one other thing that I think is worth talking about real quick before we go through any of these other things, is that every single team makes the play-ins. So honestly, I kind of don't understand why we're doing a full group stage. If every team is just going to make play-ins, then all of these games are kind of seeding games other than the teams that make the top four. So the top four make it directly to playoffs, and everybody else makes it to play-ins. So we're going to have a lot of seeding games probably towards the end of this stage. It's not a great format. So I guess maybe it doesn't completely destroy their chances, because at the very least they could potentially win their way through play-ins. But it's definitely going to hurt Sentinel's chances to place highly. So I think I'm going to have to pick Cloud9 just based off of that news. If John does play, I would pick Sentinels. So I'm just going to put that caveat out there. I think it's also worth maybe talking about Cloud9 slightly. They have done another plus-minus situation with Vic being the guy this time. Quit on the team, wanted out in stage 1, decided to go play tier 2 from home because he didn't like playing in tier 1, I guess, or that's what they said. And then he has rejoined the team now because Note, who was their smokes player, I guess was not working out in their system for whatever reason. So they brought back Vic, who understands the system and understands the team to some extent. Very weird situation. Kind of a, you know, bad taste in the mouth type of situation, but also you never know what's going on in these teams. So I don't want to judge too harshly, but like, I will just say this. If anybody were to quit on my team in the middle of a stage, I probably would not hire you back no matter what the circumstances are. But that's just me, and I can't really speak for what Cloud9's needs are in this situation. And it's not like Vic is a bad player. So, you know, in some sense, I can't blame them if he is like the best player that they can get. I mean, you're trying to win, you're trying to go to champs, so you got to do what you got to do. But yeah, it's very weird. And honestly, I kind of just want to pick Sentinels just for the hate pick, and I think I'm going to do it. Okay, Envy versus EG. This is a very weird game. These two teams were my bottom two, or two of my bottom 4 teams coming into stage 2. I have Envy rated higher. This roster is not correct either. Eggster is not playing anymore. Poppin is obviously not there anymore. So now we have Knights, who was on Qbert Academy, or Sentinels Academy, basically. And also Glyph, who was playing on Gentlemates over in EMEA. So a very weird collection of players, a huge amount of firepower. And that kind of makes you think that, well, Envy should be able to just shoot their way out of problems against a team like EG, who is, I think, kind of towards the bottom in terms of just raw ability. But also, I mean, EG has been working together for a while, and I think they had a decent sort of finish to the end of their season when they brought in their 2 new players. I mean, they lost the games, but they weren't like the worst team in the league, I think, at that point. They looked like they had some upward momentum. So it's kind of hard to rate them. I think I'm actually going to pick EG here just because I feel like they will be a more coherent team. And I think that they will just lean on Digizin's operator to the point where a team like Envy that might kind of be running around and just trying to shoot could get picked apart a little bit. I think stylistically it might work out okay for EG. I don't feel confident about that pick, but I think just based off how much turmoil Envy's had as a team, I think it's probably a slight edge to EG just off of like team cohesion. Okay, the next match that I think is very interesting to talk about is Crew and Loud, because this is another team in Loud that has made quite a few changes. They now have, I believe, who is their team? They no longer have Kawanzine and Verdi. So Erde is their IGL. Darker looked very good in stage 1. Luke Show looks great as well. They have brought in, I believe, an academy player from Crew, and then another, is it TK Zin, I think is, yeah, I think TK Zin. Yeah, he was on Crew Academy team, and I believe that he is now going to be on loan to Loud, the duelist player. So I assume he will be replacing Verdi in that position. And then I don't remember who their other player is. Have they announced it? I'm gonna do a little bit of on-the-fly research here real quick. Loud Valorant latest. Who is their last player? Honestly, I'm not sure. I think I'm probably gonna go ahead and just pick Crew, even though they also have made some interesting moves. They also have dropped a couple of players. So Silence is out, replaced with Heat. Heat obviously was on Vivo Keyed back at Champions 2021 and was a duelist at that point. It looks like he'll probably be playing Flex, because I assume Les will be their main Sentinel. MW, I assume, will still be on Recon / Initiator. Dante, I assume, will be playing quite a bit of Neon still, given that Neon has been sort of like proven time and time again to be a decent to good agent still. And I guess Heat will probably be their secondary duelist / Flex player, or maybe Sadok plays Flex and Heat plays Smokes / secondary. I don't know. I guess Sadok will probably play Smokes because that's what he played in the first stage. Either way, I mean, both teams are very interesting. Loud looked much better once Erde joined them, but they also have made quite a few changes, so kind of remains to be seen how those players all gel together. I think I'm just going to go with Crew and Sadok's experience, Les's experience, and I would hope that they just have maybe refined a little bit more what their plans are with the young guys, because I think that was the big thing that happened, is like they came out looking insanely good at stage 1, and then it really kind of looked like the young players, specifically Dante Deus and Silence, really started feeling the pressure and were not comfortable on stage and in their roles, and really just didn't have like the level of good decision making and support potentially that they needed to perform at a tier 1 level. So I would assume that they will have gotten better, and I guess I just kind of trust Sadok and MW and Les to carry this team. But I think this is probably kind of like a 50-50, and whichever team wins this will end up having a pretty good stage, I think. Okay, G2 versus 100 Thieves is really interesting. Obviously, 100 Thieves coming off of a EWC win. G2 did play EWC, right? I think they did. Sorry for having to keep doing this, but like I said, I didn't really watch too much of this tournament. Yeah, okay, so G2 kind of bombed out of EWC. They play 100 Thieves, and 100 Thieves has 0 time, but they're in good form. G2 may be in worse form, but I would just kind of have to guess that G2 will have just been watching 100 Thieves play, studying them, seeing where, maybe teams took maps off of them and just really targeting those. Plus, 100 Thieves now has to integrate 2 new maps. I think I just have to go G2 based off of that event hangover. Like, it was a really big deal for the teams last year. I mean, I experienced it firsthand, as I said. And for a team like G2, like, they don't need too much extra edge to beat most teams. And so even though 100 Thieves is in very good form, I think it's going to be hard for them to travel back 2 days later, play, and probably have to just immediately give up a map to G2 in terms of not having like anything set for it. Now, Energy MIBR is a very interesting one as well, because Energy had MIBR's number early on this year, and these teams both played at EWC. MIBR went home. Wait, MIBR was there as well. Yeah, they were. 99% sure they were there, right? MIBR was at EWC. Yeah. Okay, so, but they went home a little earlier, I believe, and so they have a couple extra days, a few extra days to prep against Energy. I think the main thing for me is that I just am not sure what Energy is up to right now. They're playing Ethan Neon. They're playing some crazy stuff. I mean, if we look at their last few matches, they're playing Ethan Neon KO. Kiko's playing Jet Chamber. Mata is playing Phoenix Harbor. And we just see this again. Ethan, KO, Fade, Neon, Kiko, Smokes on Omen, Jet, Chamber. It's kind of like they're putting the players on comfort roles, but Ethan is just tanking playing the Neon because they think they need to play the Neon, I guess, is kind of what's happening here. I'm not super confident in MIBR against Energy, just because I feel like Energy is a team that understands how to beat MIBR. They've done it in the past. They've really nullified Ospas quite a bit. MIBR has been very up and down. But I guess I'm just going to continue with the narrative of you come back from EWC and you probably lose to a team that's pretty close to your level. So I guess I'm just going to go MIBR. Yeah, not feeling too confident about some of these picks here. But we'll lock this in. Form invalid. Hello? Okay, so real quick. Lev, Sentinels for Spite, EG, Crew, G2, and MIBR. Lock it in. Yeah, it'll be really interesting to see what happens with these teams and Summit and Sunset. We've seen some Summit played already in China. I wonder how quickly the Americas teams will adopt it. From what I remember, I feel like Americas tends to be the latest team to pick up new maps. They tend to prefer playing like comfort maps and waiting to see how other people do stuff before maybe integrating it into their map pool. I seem to remember that with like Abyss and some of the older maps as well. So we'll have to see. We'll have to see if that curveball really plays a role here. Okay, let's move on to talking about Pacific. Now, Pacific is a very interesting one as well, just because of this additional... Oh, actually, sorry. Before we do that, I do want to just talk about the Americas points. So Lev has the lead by 1. G2 has 14. Lev has 15. And Energy is the next closest with 11. After that, there's a fairly sharp drop to Furia with 7, 100 Thieves with 5, Crew with 4. And so, realistically, this is probably like a 3-team race. Lev, G2, Energy are the most likely teams to make it with points. Lev should be pretty locked in on points, just because, even if they were to fall behind, let's say Energy wins the stage and Lev, wins some games, maybe gets top 4, I'm pretty sure they will still have enough points to go. So I think Lev is pretty close to guaranteed as long as they don't just completely fall off, which I don't think that they will. But the context of these matches is very important, especially some of these early ones. Like if Energy loses to MIBR, they're off to a rough start. If G2 loses to 100 Thieves, and Energy wins, then all of a sudden we get Energy up to 12, right? Because every win counts as a champs point. And so we get closer and closer. So that will be a very interesting race to watch. Okay, let's talk about Pacific, and I'm going to start with the champs points because I think this is a good place to look at. So Paper X locked in with 22 points, way ahead of everybody else. So there is one spot left for champs points. Nongshim currently holds the lead. Obviously, they won Masters #1. Santiago got 6 points for it. And then they had a bit of a rough stage 1 where they were trying to figure out what their identity was. They've made quite a few changes now. They have Francis full-time initiator. Looks like he's also IGLing, which will be interesting. RB just kind of playing smokes to play smokes at this point. And they have moved X-Ross over to secondary duelist. He's playing a lot of Phoenix. He was a duelist in tier 2, so it's not like an unfamiliar role. But he was so good on initiator, it's just kind of an interesting change. Now, T1 has removed stacks, brought up DH, and then I think full sense. I mean, even global is within striking distance here, just because PaperX has hoarded so many points. But realistically, I think this is probably down to T1, full sense, and Nongshim, just based off of what I expect these teams to be power level wise. I mean, maybe global will come out and surprise, maybe RQ will as well. But I think a team like DRX, who very well could have a great stage, given that they have a history of doing stuff like that, probably can't catch Nongshim, even if they have a really, really good stage. So I think it really is just T1 and Nongshim, and then a super outside chance for Full Sense. Full Sense would probably have to go like 5-0 in groups, and then hope to make a very deep run in playoffs as well. So yeah. I mean, it's tough when there's only one spot for points. It's every single game is going to matter. So Nongshim flying back from EWC and getting right back into the action. Let's go to the pick'ems here, and we can see they played 2 games in week 1, which is that's another thing. I also want to give a quick little anecdote about this, which is that last year they did this as well for stage 2. Not quite the same schedule, but all of a sudden. So kickoff was a tournament, right? And then stage 1 was weekly games. So we played for 5 weeks with, a break, a 5 to 6 day break between each match. And then we come into stage 2 and all of a sudden we play back-to-back games to start. So last year I beat RQ in week #1. And then a day later we had to play, or 2 days later we had to play Secret. And that short turnaround, I think, really cost my team because we weren't able to sort of like reset and then re-prep. We had 1 day of practice. We had some issues on that day of practice, and we brought in a, I think, subpar level to that Secret game and lost. So instead of starting 2-0, which I think we probably should have, we started off 1-1, and then that put us in a situation where we basically had to win all of our games to make playoffs, and obviously we didn't do that. So it's really, really important if you have a double week at the beginning to start off 2-0 if you can. And for Nongshim, I feel for them because they come back from EWC after getting close and then losing, so they have this emotional roller coaster, and then they have to come right in to play against Full Sense, who is a dangerous looking team with a coach who has beat them a lot historically, and then they have to play Gen G, who is a team that, while they had a bad year so far, you never really want to count them out. And there's also some history here as well, because Yeoman, who is the assistant coach for Nongshim, was on Gen G last year in stage 1, and I think kickoff as well, before getting dropped. So there's going to be some really weird dynamics going on here. I think it's a little scary for them. Like, there's a very good chance they could go 0-2 to start the stage, and then that puts all of this context into a totally different perspective. Because if they lose their first 2 games, now, there's not that many more chances for them to get points. T1 might start off hot, and then all of a sudden we've got a really, really close race. So talking about the games one by one, Gen.G versus Zeta Division. Um, I mean, just to be perfectly honest, I just don't think that this Zeta Division team really has what it takes to beat anybody. They didn't make any changes after having a really poor stage one. Obviously, they did get, a win against Viral, but they looked like they were just kind of getting outshot by most teams. They had some okay showings early on in the stage, but then it just kind of felt like most of the teams were kind of outskilling them. Now, I don't know too much about Rascal. I do remember Afina from when he played on F4Q back in the day. He's been around for a while. They do have an experienced IGL. I don't really know what the firepower level of Gen.G is with these two new players, but I do know that Karen and Texture can shoot. Ash can shoot as well. I would expect Gen.G to have a decent system in place. Maybe this one is closer than I'm giving it credit for, but I definitely think that Zeta just kind of has an uphill climb against every team this year. So that being said, oh man, I picked Gen.G to do okay. And I said Zeta was the weakest team in the region. But now that I'm thinking about it, I mean Zeta, they've just been working with their 5. Maybe their synergy is better, and I'm just thinking about when Gen.G was shuffling their roster around last year, how bad they looked when they were bringing in players and swapping them in and out, and even this year as well. I mean, I feel like Gen.G's coaching staff has really kind of trolled me in my perception of them with all of the roster moves that they've been making. They haven't looked great. The current meta, assume Zeta will still... I'm going to go completely against my power ranking right now. I'm going to pick Zeta just because of that extra time buff of playing together as 5. I'm thinking about Absol being a pretty good... Okay, I can't talk myself into it. I don't think I can talk myself into it. I think I'm just going to go Gen.G. Are they going to put Karen back on smokes? Surely. Is that enough? I don't know. I really don't. I'm so torn on this one. I might come back and change this. Okay, Team Secret and Viral is the next matchup that we're going to talk about. And this one, I have a fairly high opinion of Team Secret, just based off of what I saw from Zeus at the end of Stage 1. They've now brought on a different coach in IGL, and I think those changes are going to be good for them. I think they've kept probably their 3 best players from, kickoff in Stage 1, and they have added in maybe some additional structure that was necessary, some additional firepower as well. So I think they're going to be pretty good. I guess pretty good is relative. I think they have a chance to make playoffs potentially. Viral, they've kept their roster the same except for Foxy9 is now in, I think, replacing Klaus or Cinder, one of the two of them. And so they get a little bit of experience, which is good, which is definitely something they were lacking in Stage 1. I think they were very clearly an inexperienced team, just kind of running around shooting. They looked like they were afraid to start the stage, afraid to play like how they did in Tier 2. And then by the time they realized, wait, maybe we can just run around and shoot like we did in Tier 2, it was too late. They kind of lost their confidence, and they're like, the bedrock, the fundamentals of their Valorant is not good. So I assume they've been working on that, but also until this team actually shows that they can play reasonably good Valorant, I'm just going to pick against them all the time. So I'm going to go with Team Secret here. Now, Full Sense and Nongshim, I kind of just have to go Full Sense. Nongshim coming off of travel. The history of Frost and Cruz against Nongshim has been pretty good for the Full Sense team. And I just think it's going to be tough for Nongshim to come back and beat them right off the bat. Okay, KRX against DFM. So KRX is now playing with Yong for sure. At least for now. There might be another roster move in the works at some point. DFM, oh man, DFM came into this year pretty hyped, and then they really kind of dropped the ball. I mean, their stage one was atrocious. They beat Zeta and Veryl. They got wrecked by Full Sense T1, lost to RQ. They got bounced in the EWC qualifiers as well. Again, I just think that Zeta, I just think that DFM, like, they've got pretty good firepower, but I think they've got some role issues. They had Yatsuka playing Initiator when he was like a good Sentinel in Tier 2 because they wanted Akame to play Sentinel so that they could play Chamber with him. And I mean, maybe they'll figure it out going into Stage 2, but against a team that is just historically solid, even though this year they've been shakier than usual, I think I just have to go KRX. I just don't really have any faith in DFM. I just don't really have any faith in them. Okay. RQ against Global. RQ against Global. So this would be another Jovi versus Frost matchup in the coaching staff if things hadn't changed. Global now has a different coaching staff. RQ has made one change in Monyet getting dropped for Zan, the Malaysian player, who looked pretty good in Tier 2, and I definitely scrimmed him quite a bit last year when he was on Naus. And he was a pretty feast or famine, could be very, very good on the day, but also could drop a stinker sometimes. So kind of similar to what Monyet brings, I think, but he's more duelist-minded than Monyet was, so I will be curious to see what RQ plays comp-wise. I mean, I kind of feel like Global can win this, even though I'm not super high on them. I think it really just depends on like what are the vibes for Global. I think I'm gonna pick Global here actually. Now that I'm thinking about it, just because I do think that their players are pretty good, and I haven't really liked what I've seen from RQ this year. Like, I think they've just been a very average team, whereas Global has shown the potential to be pretty good at times. And I think I'm just going to go with like Global honeymoon phase to start the season before maybe coming crashing back down to earth. I'm going to go Global here, but I think this is pretty 50-50. Now, okay, this next game is very interesting because I have seen quite a bit of discussion about how Paper X is just not going to try at all. And so they might be bad and a bunch of teams might beat them. They might not have a good stage because they'll just be doing random stuff. But the thing is that when Paper X doesn't care, I think they're even better than when they do care. I think historically they're a team that is like, the more fun that they have, the better they are. And so if they don't have to care about anything, there's zero pressure for them. They could go 0-5 and they would still go to champions. I think that's really scary. I think that's really scary. And so I'm kind of tempted to think that they will actually just be insanely good because they'll just be doing random stuff and trying out weird comps and just really throwing people off by, well, it doesn't matter if I walk through smokes with no flashes and no utility. I can just do whatever I want because it doesn't matter. And that's when Paper X is at their scariest. Now, historically, Munchkin has been good against Paper X. He has had their number when he was on Gen G, but this team is a bit different. I haven't loved how Meteor is playing either. He's been playing a lot more duelist, I think, I think Izu is now their full-time initiator player, and Meteor is probably playing secondary duelist quite a bit, like the Phoenix and that type of thing. If T1 is really leaning into double duelist and playing PaperX's game against PaperX, I think they're gonna lose. I think T1 is good, and I think that the DH move is probably going to end up being good for them. But I don't I don't know if they're going to beat PaperX here. Hmm. I think I'm going to pick PaperX. I think people are maybe underrating PaperX cuz they just assume that they're just going to be messing around and not trying. But I feel like when PaperX has no pressure, they're by far the best team in the world. So I'm just gonna go PaperX. I think PaperX is gonna just destroy some teams in stage two. Even if they're playing some like mix harbor gecko stuff. I feel like they could do some crazy things and get away with it. Um okay, Nongshim against Genji. We picked Genji against Zeta, but we didn't feel good about it. I think that Nongshim. Oh man. I think Nongshim are good enough that they can outskill Genji's new players. I'm going to pick Nongshim here. I don't feel super confident about it just because of the hangover time here. How far apart are these games? I assume it's like a couple of days, like it was last year. So they play on. Okay, 2 days apart. They play on Friday the 17th, and then they play on Sunday. Yeah, so it is a very quick turnaround. I have to believe that they will go 1-1 at least. I can't believe that they would go 0-2 to start this, because they played pretty well at UWC. But I think they'll be able to gut out one of these. Okay, and then KRX against Team Secret. This is, I think, a bit closer than maybe some people would think. But I am just going to go with what I know, and that is that KRX is very good in the group stage. They're just a solid team. I think they will probably still be able to outskill Team Secret and outsystem them. So we will go with KRX here. So the picks are, we're saving it: Genji beating Zeta, Team Secret beating Viral, Full Sense beating Nongshim, KRX beating DFM and Team Secret, Nongshim beating Genji, PaperX beating T1. I don't feel super confident about this, but I also don't feel that bad. And then Global beating RRQ. Okay, that is Pacific. Let's move on to EMEA and let us refresh our brain with the context, which is very fun for EMEA. Nobody is remotely close to locking in points. We've got Foot and Vitality tied with 10. So they currently hold the 1 and 2 slots of qualifying with champs points. Heretics comes in at number 9. BBL, or sorry, not at number 9. Heretics comes in third with 9 points, so just one behind the leaders. BBL has 7 points. Eternal Fire has 6. Fnatic has 6. Liquid has 6. Gentle Mates has 5. So realistically, the top 8 teams are probably all in the hunt. They're all in the hunt for points. I think once you get down to Gentlemates and, I mean, so let's just take Fnatic as an example. If in stage 2 they were to go 4-1 in groups, they would have 10 points. That would tie them for the champs points at the start of the stage. Very likely Foot and Vitality will each win at least 3 games, I think. So 13 is probably the number to beat at minimum. So you have to get at least 7 points. 7 or 8 points maybe to have a chance. Which I think Fnatic and Liquid can certainly do. But yeah, it's gonna be very interesting. I think realistically, Foot and Vitality are in a pretty good spot. Heretics as well. I do think that, this 3 to 4 point gap matters quite a bit here, because it is like 4 wins in the stage basically, that you have an advantage of. So probably it will end up being Foot, Vitality, or Heretics, 2 of those 3 that make it off of points. But definitely there is some chance for a team like Heretics maybe to bomb out, because they've been very hot and cold. I think Vitality and Foot will probably be fine. And you really need like a big run from Eternal Fire, Fnatic, or Liquid to make it. So yeah, I guess there's a lot of intrigue here just because every game matters, but also I think it's maybe a little bit more cut and dry than it appears. Okay, let's just go into the games. We'll talk about it. So right off the bat, we've got Foot and Na'Vi. Foot have certainly surprised me ever since they made their 2 roster moves, bringing in Sop. I mean, he became of age, so he was able to play. So Sop, Frostily, Sociable, Zeus, Yetijay. This squad, ever since this has been their 5, they have looked really good. Even with the meta changes in terms of the initiator cooldowns, I don't think it's necessarily enough to really push the game in a completely new direction. So I think their style will still be pretty good. I think Zeus has really benefited from having a second sort of super aggressive fragger alongside him in Sop. And I think they are just a good team at this point. Now, Na'Vi has been making a lot of moves this year, and there's definitely some question marks. I'm gonna be honest, I think this is pretty straightforward. Foot wins this. Even though Ruxic and Hero are good, even though Chloric has been a pretty solid IGL, Sivo exit too big of a question mark for me on these 2 players integrating into this roster, kind of keeping up with the insane firepower of the Foot players. I think it's just going to be too much for them. So I'm going to go Foot there. Now, Liquid against EF is really interesting too, because I'm so torn with Eternal Fire. I put them quite low in my power rankings because I just feel like they can't keep getting away with how they're playing. But also maybe they can is the thing. I was also a little concerned that I'd heard that maybe they're replacing Izzy, but I don't think that's actually going to be the case. So that rumor might have been bullshit, or maybe they were exploring some options, but then they decided to stay with Izzy. I haven't really heard anything about whether they're actually making any moves. So if they have this 5 still, I think they're really dangerous. On the other side, Liquid has made a lot of moves. Miniboo out, Wayne out, Kicks in, Trex in. I mean, there's now 3 Russian players on this team. That's kind of interesting culturally. We've got Nats IGLing still, I assume, with Trex probably secondary calling. I don't know how well these guys will bounce off each other, because from what I understand, Trex is pretty vocal. Camo, I assume, back to duelist. Purpo maybe secondary duelist, while Trex takes over the recon role. There's a lot of moving pieces here. And so while I do want to believe in the Liquid project, and I did rate Eternal Fire quite low, if EF is not making any changes and Liquid is making 1 billion changes, I think I'm just going to pick Eternal Fire, because if they can just run you over and you can't stop them because you're not coordinated, then what are you going to do? Yeah, I feel like this Liquid team might have a little bit of growing pains. So I'm just going to go ahead and pick Eternal Fire here, going against my power rankings a bit. Fnatic Giants, I don't think there's too much to talk about here. I mean, Fnatic made kind of a strange roster move. They brought in Cloud to replace Vekaj, or Sivo, who was standing in for Vekaj. Their roles are very strange, but they still have Boastor, Alfier, and Kayak. And Giants is sort of like a mishmash of players at this point. Bringing in Net to IGL for them. I think I'm just going to pick Fnatic and just not think too much about it. Okay. Pacific and Gentlemates. Gentlemates looked pretty good at EWC from what I could see in their stats. Pacific is... I mean, they're a team. They are a team in the league. CNED no longer there. I don't even remember what is their team. That's so bad. I just don't even know what is their team now. Who is their five? Dangerously scrolling down on Twitter, trying to find out what their roster is. Where is their roster announcement? They have one? No roster announcement. We'll just purely I'm sure there is one somewhere. But purely off of the fact that I can't find it easily, I'm just gonna go ahead and pick Gentlemates. Okay, Carmine Core in Eternal Fire. Okay. So I just picked Eternal Fire to beat Liquid, who I think is probably a pretty solid team. However, for some reason, I'm a bit higher on this Carmine Core team than I have been in a while. I think they have an incredible amount of firepower on this team. I think Narrate can see his recent games. He's playing some Phoenix. 173 ADR on Phoenix is some obscene numbers. Chambered Jet, he's been okay, opping quite a bit. Sugetsu Dosia. Sugetsu's numbers have been down this year. They've been consistently down. He's been kind of a disappointment. Dosia has been hit or miss. I mean, I guess we'll still kind of have to see. Aves with the calling, been kind of hit or miss. I mean, this is a hit or miss team. It's a hit or miss team, but I think they will be better than they were at any point so far this year. I kind of want to believe. I kind of want to believe in this team. But do I think they can beat Eternal Fire? I don't. I think I might have underrated Eternal Fire in my power ranking. if Eternal Fire beats Liquid, they will beat Carmine Core. If they lose to Liquid, I think they will lose to Carmine Core. So this is kind of a 2-for-1 right now. And I'm going with Eternal Fire, sort of subverting my expectations from last week, where I was going off the assumption they were replacing Izzy. And oh my god, shut up, Creative Cloud. I don't care about your updates. Man, if they're not replacing Izzy, I think Eternal Fire is going to be good. So I might have just completely screwed my power rankings, but it is what it is. Okay, Vitality against Na'Vi. I think Vitality is on a good path. They're not like true tier 1 gonna win a trophy level, I think, as a team yet, but I think they're going to be better than Na'Vi. I know they didn't do particularly well at EWC, but I think they're just a pretty good team. And until Na'Vi shows me that they are also a pretty good team, I'm going to pick the teams that I know can perform. Gentlemates against Foot. This is going to be a banger match, I think. We've got super weeks for everybody. And so both Vitality and Gentlemates playing 2 games apiece. Na'Vi also playing 2 games. It's going to be a crazy, crazy week where, like, it's almost to the point where in 1 week, your entire season could be defined for some of these teams. But I think they will win this. I think I'm kind of like sold on Foot. I think they're good, and I think that their style is unique enough and their firepower is just so high that it creates some real problems for everybody other than like the top teams, which is essentially nobody because they are one of the top teams. So I think Foot will win this. Now, Liquid against Heretics. I mean, Liquid playing a double week. Heretics coming back from EWC. Oh, man. It really comes down to, do I think that Liquid's going to be able to put together? Trying to think about like the new maps too. I assume Nats is playing some lurky Cypher stuff. He might be able to destroy on Summit because of it. Or Viper. I assume they'll play Sunset. They were pretty good at. Okay, actually, you know what? I'm gonna believe. I'm gonna believe. I'm gonna say Eternal Fire loses to Liquid. They will also lose to Carmine Core. Liquid will beat Heretics as well because I just don't believe in Heretics right now. We're coping. I think we're coping, but we're going with it. I also put Heretics in my top 2 of power rankings. Why do I think they're gonna beat? Think, Donnie. Do I actually think they're gonna beat Heretics? Oh, it's because of the EWC. I'm gonna go with this. Honestly, I have not liked watching Heretics play very much this year. I think that I trolled by putting them top 2 in my power rankings. Um, I mean they have good players, but I just have not been a huge fan of them this year. I'm just gonna go with Liquid. I think it's probably a mistake to pick Liquid to win 2 games here, but I'm just gonna do it. Carmine Core also is gonna beat Giants. If they're gonna beat Eternal Fire, they should beat Giants as well. And then Vitality against BBL. Ooh. I'm kind of down on BBL as well. Do I really think that all the teams that play 2 games are going to win all of them? Other than Navi? I'm going like pure momentum here. Some of these. Vitality, will they beat BBL? Now's where I kind of wish that I had watched some of EWC because I would have a better sense of how these teams are. But I couldn't be bothered. So I'm kind of just going off of the stats that I saw on the scoreboard and just my general perception of these teams. Um, I think BBL's magic is going to wear off. It already kind of has. I feel like they're kind of a figured out team. If LaRock doesn't carry them, I don't think that Lover's Rock can pick up the slack anymore. Um, yeah, I think Vitality will win this. Oh man, this Liquid pick is going to come back to haunt me for sure. Sure. And so is the Carmine Core one. Let's be honest. But we're going to go ahead and lock it in. Oh, invalid form, trying to save me from myself. Who do I have? We had Foot, we had Liquid, we had Fnatic, Gentlemates, Carmine Core, Vitality, Foot, Liquid, Carmine Core, Vitality. Okay, locking it in. Let's talk about China. So we got Wolves over Wolves over Titan, correct? We missed on Dragon Ranger versus Billy. We missed on Trace over FPX. I mean, Trace looks horrific. They look really bad. Tai Lu beat JDG. Dragon Ranger Gaming beat Titan. I think Titan is worse than I thought, and Dragon Ranger is. I mean, they're literally just the same team they've always been. It's like Vukashu killing everybody. Life looks like he's feeding all the time. Nick, Spirit Z1 are decent. DRG is probably like a 5th, 6th team. I had them in the bottom 4 of China. That was wrong. I'll just freely admit that. Nova beat FPX. I'm actually pretty high on this Nova team, and the reason is that they've had time to work together. They have a lot of shooters, and the Swagzor kid is insanely good. He's really, really good. Their main duelist. So Nova's actually significantly better than expected, and Tai Lu absolutely decimated Trace. I think that Tai Lu is probably the best team in China outside of maybe EDG or XLG, but they definitely look like they are going to live up to the expectations, at least for now. Once they play EDG, that will be a very interesting test for them. But I kind of feel like Tai Lu might come out of groups undefeated. They look really strong. But they've also been playing some poo teams. JDG does not look good, and Trace, like I said, is potentially the worst team in the league. So we will have to see when they're against tougher competition. But moving on to week number 2, China going in with a whopping 14 games in week 2, and let's just do them quickly. So we have Wolves against All Gamers. All Gamers played at EWC. Wolves has been decent, but also not like lights out. My boy Darion has had some incredible maps, but also the team has been kind of hit or miss. I think we're seeing a little bit of inexperience from the likes of Glacier, and even though Spring is good and Darion is good, Aluba has had some pretty good moments. They just seem like they're like a mid-table team. Against AG, I think that might be enough to beat them, but also AG has been pretty good this year. How did AG do at EWC? I know they got knocked out fairly early, but they lost to Heretics, they lost to MIBR, they beat Club. They got kind of destroyed by MIBR. They're kind of a hit or miss team. I mean, Fangear is really good, and Shrimp is good. I don't know. This is a tough one. I think I probably should be picking All Gamers, but I'm going to pick Wolves because of my boy Derek. XLG will beat Titan. FPX against JDG. I think FPX will win this, just because I think JDG is pretty bad at this point. EDG versus Tyloo is a very interesting game. I'm going to go Tyloo. I think we might have a new king of China here, at least regionally. But EDG, if they're hitting, then they're hitting, and you're probably not beating them. But I'm gonna go Tyloo here. I think Sufat, his vibes and his leadership will help take them over the edge. And they're just a scary team with momentum. They're already 2-0. They're going to be coming into this raring to go, ready to secure their spot in playoffs already potentially. This is going to be a very fun game to watch. I'm excited for this one. AG versus Billy Billy. Now, this is another interesting one. I mean, Billy Billy, I think they're also really kind of in the middle of the pack. I'm going to pick AG over them because I do think that AG is pretty good. I know that Billy Billy beat Wolves here, but I think all these teams are really close in terms of, if they all played each other in a round robin, play each other like 5-10 times, I think probably it would be fairly even. Maybe Wolves comes out at the bottom of that. Ooh, kind of want to pick AG here, but I'm gonna go AG over Billy Billy, Wolves over AG again. I'm picking for Darion. That's it. Sheila against DRG. Sheila will win. This is where DRG starts to crumble. This is where they start to crumble. Nova against JDG. I'm gonna go Nova, honestly. Nova, I think, might be a surprising team here. They might be 3-0 at the end of this week. They play some pretty weak teams. Tyloo, if they beat EDG, they are beating FPX. They might have some random weird loss, though, which I could see happening against a team like FPX. Maybe antes them a bit, but we're just going to ride the Tyloo train. They're dominating. They're doing well. Trace will lose to EDG. Billy Billy will beat Titan Esports. AG against XLG. I think I got to go XLG here. I think they're just too good domestically. Nova should beat Trace as well. Wolves DRG. Again, these games are going to be kind of like back-to-back real quick. I mean, if they're beating AG, they should beat DRG. But do I really believe they're going to beat AG? I'm just praying on DRG's downfall. I'm praying on their downfall. Let's go Wolves. Let's go Wolves. EDG will beat JDG. That's the pick'ems here. Oh, Valid form is killing me. Let's do it again. Okay, Wolves, Shilai, FPX, Tyloo, AG, XLG, Nova, Tyloo, EDG, BLG, XLG, Nova, Wolves, and EDG. Lock it in. That's my pick'ems for week number 2 in China, as well as week number 1 in the other regions. Like I said, I guess we should also just touch on the Chinese qualification points. Forgot to cover this early on. EDG, XLG, big lead. They're probably making it off of points, both these teams. AG and DRG could catch them. Nobody else can. So Tyloo has to go for top 2 as well as everybody else. Will EDG and XLG take their foot off the gas a little bit? I don't think so, because I think that domestic trophies in China matter quite a bit to these teams, just because of how big the game is there. So I think they'll probably still be going all out. But yeah, it's going to be really, really interesting to see who gets the other 2 spots. Because, I mean, I'm just going to call it EDG, XLG will make it to champs like 100%. One way or the other, and very likely off of points. But if these 2 teams do both qualify in the top 2 spots, which they've been known to do, then suddenly the race for points becomes a lot more interesting. So I think most of the teams are actually kind of hoping that these 2 teams are the top 2 teams in playoffs, like grand finals, because then all of a sudden their points are a little bit more valid. But yeah, that being said, that is the episode. Thank you for watching CompCheck episode number 14. We'll see you next week. Peace.